Apologies if you can hear the rain, but it's raining and unfortunately there's nothing I can do about the weather. Today I wanted to film a review of West Side Story, the incredible movie. So I am a humongous musical theatre fan. Musical theatre is my passion, it is my dream profession, and it's actually something I'm going into as a profession next month. It's something that I can talk for hours about. And this film happened to be on over Christmas, and I sat down because the opening sequence, well, after the overture, which is where the bits of music from throughout the whole film play and the screen changes colour. After that, which is the overture, you get the first kind of sequence, which is once you're a jet, you're always a jet, but it's leading up to that. It's all the famous West Side Story opening music. And you've got the dance sequence with the Jets, who are our white gang, and our Sharks, who are our Puerto Rican gang. And it is one of the most highly acclaimed opening sequences of a film ever in existence, because it was the first time, my dad keeps talking about it, it's one of his favourite films of all time, if not his favourite film of all time. And he says that at the time it had never been done before. They danced in the actual proper streets. This wasn't a studio, this was the streets. So it had never been done before, and it made dancing cool, and it's just so incredible. It's so highly esteemed. And in my personal opinion, it's critically flawless. The shots, the choreography, the acting, the cinematography, the mise-en-scène, it's delightful. So I sat down, and once it got to the end of that section I was like, right, I'm gonna get up to go, and I didn't. I stayed there and I watched the entire film because the music is beautiful. Every song when it plays is my favourite song, and I still am not 100% sure of what my favourite song is because every time one plays it's that. Although I do love Keep Cool, which is towards the end. It's brilliant. I won't talk about any of the big plot points because in case you're one of these crazy people who hasn't seen it or hasn't read Romeo and Juliet, because it's essentially based off of Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. It's put into the west side of New York in the 50s, I believe. It's about gang culture, and inevitably that has some dire consequences which affect most prominently Maria and Tony, our loved up romantic couple. I think all of the characters in this are so beautifully fleshed out, and even the characters you don't really speak to and get to know, you still know enough that they just kind of have crappy lives and this is all they know, and they're teenage boys with some pent-up frustration, so everything that happens is so obvious. Inevitably there are deaths in this, and the ending of this film, again, let's talk about the final sequence, is also impeccable. It's just so harrowing and beautifully delivered that you can't, I don't know anybody who hasn't cried while watching this film. It's stellar. However, while that is completely harrowing and heart-wrenching and moving, the scene that affects me the most actually comes a bit earlier, probably 20 minutes, half an hour earlier than that, which is when Anita, Maria's friend and sister-in-law, Maria's our main female character, our Juliet of the film, Anita goes and speaks to the American boys, and she wants to find Tony because Maria sent her to find him. And essentially the scene is portrayed in a way that is suggestive of sexual abuse and treating women like scum because she's Puerto Rican and a woman. And it didn't used to be the most harrowing scene for me, but now as a young woman it really gets to me. Oh my gosh. I would go as far to say that a huge portion of this film is flawless. It's incredible. There are only a few things that I dislike, but they were trying to be innovative and different at the time, so you can allow that because it was in the 60s and they didn't have the same technology that we have now to make it perhaps the vision that they had imagined. So things like some of the changeover of scenes and the cuts, especially in the ball scene, I find uncomfortable because they're just not my style of film. It's a bit too quirky for me, but I take it with a pinch of salt because it's probably not quite the vision that they had imagined because they only had limited technology. It's funny that I'm saying that because in 50 years, when people are reviewing films from 2017, they're going to be like, limited technology, they couldn't quite do the vision, and I think that's so exciting. The only other thing, of course, that I have to talk about if I talk about West Side Story is that the singing voices of Maria and Tony and Anita for the song A Boy Like That are not the actor's own, they are dubbed. And it's just a shame, I think, because it was so normal for singers to not be featured in the films and to have a big actor who was then dubbed. That was pretty standard, and so it can be expected. However, with a film like West Side Story, which is so raw, having people have heard I think it's Natalie Wood plays, that might be wrong, but something like that. She played Maria. Everyone who's heard the original, because she sang, it sounded okay. And for a film like West Side Story, it can be a little bit less beautiful because it's more about the raw emotion of the film, in the same way of Patti LuPone. Sometimes she doesn't sound incredible because she's choosing emotion over beauty. But also with these things like them dancing in the street and not using a studio for the first time for the dance, and different styles of dance and different styles of cutting scenes together and being creative in that sense and innovative and modern, you'd think they would be modern with using actors who could sing. But there we go. I think that's everything. If you haven't seen West Side Story, I implore you to see it. There isn't a word. There isn't a word for West Side Story. I've used a lot of descriptive words in this, but there isn't one that I can sum it all up in. So just watch it if you haven't, and if you haven't seen it for a while, please do. That's everything. Please let me know what your thoughts are on West Side Story. And please let me know if there's another musical you've seen that you would say is up there with how flawless West Side Story is considered in the general film world as well as the musical world. I've heard that La La Land is supposed to be one of the best films of 2016, let alone musicals, so I'm going to go and see that later this month when it comes out in the UK. Bye!